Hi, I'm David Kais, and I run R for the rest of us. You may think of R as a tool for complex statistical analysis, but it's much more than that. From data visualization to efficient reporting to improving your workflow, R can do it all. On this podcast, I talk with people about how they use R in unique and creative ways. Well, I'm joined today by Travis Gerke and Garrick Aden-Buie. Travis is currently the Director of Data Science at the Prostate Cancer Clinical Trials Consortium, and Garrick is a data science educator and R developer at RStudio. They actually both worked together previously at the Moffitt Cancer Center, and they developed a set of custom packages, which is what we're mostly going to be talking about today. But before we get into that, maybe if I can start out by just asking each of you how you initially got into R and what benefits you found from using R compared to whatever tool you had been using previously. Maybe Travis, if you want to start.
Yeah, sure. So I love the title of part of the title of your series. What is it? The R without statistics. So I'm going to be kind of like not that the way I fell into R, but what's interesting is that I'm mostly back to not in the statistics mode of using R these days. So I first picked up R was probably 2008 or so when I was studying statistics undergrad at the University of Florida. Then I went on to graduate school and used a lot of R in biostatistics and later epidemiology. So it's kind of, I think I have one of the more traditional paths into using R, which is statistician, and it's probably the best statistical software out there. And it was, of course, an alternative to SAS. I was originally trained in SAS before even R. R just much more readable. It's much more cost friendly. So quite happy to be in this space now. But former academic, so I was faculty at University of Florida and then later faculty at Moffitt Cancer Center. But then I left academia and I'm now in more industry-facing roles, currently facilitating clinical trial research, doing the data science kind of work on that side, a lot of which isn't really statistics. A lot of it's really in clinical trials. It's a lot of counting and tabling, writing elegant reports in R Markdown. So quite happy to talk about the use of R without statistics because I've had a lot of impact in that particular area.
Great. Thanks, Travis. Garrick, maybe if you can talk about how you kind of first got into R.
Yeah, so probably somewhat similar in the sense that I started using R in grad school. We had at the time, I think, machine learning and AI were kind of cool things to get into. And so they developed a new course that that a new professor was teaching. And I was like super excited for this course. And then it was just like lots of math and not much programming. And almost immediately I was like, I need to actually do this. I need to learn, programming language where I can do these things. And for some reason R was the thing that I picked up. I think probably because that happened to be the same year that Roger Pang's Coursera course for R dropped. And so I did that and I learned R from there. It was actually a really great experience because you have the chance to learn the programming language, but at the same time, I had the course that I was in was giving me projects to work on, and so I had a way to like apply what I was learning almost right away and just sort of jump straight to like now I'm doing things. But the way that R works with data and the way that the way that you work with data with R always spoke to me, and I feel like it just sort of working with data and R just sort of like clicked at the same time. And so that was probably around 2012. And I've just been kind of, figuring out ways to do everything that I can with R as much as possible since then.
Yeah. And I've heard you, Garrick, call yourself a full stack R developer, which is not a term I've heard many or any other people use. I'm curious, what do you mean when you say that?
Yeah, so in the web development world, there's this idea of a full stack web developer. And that's a person there's a very clear division in web world of like front end, the things that you see in a browser window, and then back end, which is like the servers that run the websites that you're using. And like there's this weird division where or natural division where web developers like fall into one camp or the other. And then there are these people who kind of span everything. And initially was that I was using Shiny. Like, I think Shiny was kind of for me the real kind of Shiny and R Markdown were the things that really brought me into the R world. And so it was a little bit, initially it was a little bit of a nod towards like, I can use Shiny and be a full stack web developer, which is totally true. But also I kind of realized at a certain point, there's, people kind of think of R as a programming language for statistical analysis or that kind of thing. And there's so much that you can do with R, and there's so much that so many different places where you can use R or solve problems with R that I kind of realized, like at a certain point, I've been involved in lots of different flavors and variations, and I've used R in lots of places, from high performance computing centers to servers and for running websites and for generating reports and for just tinkering or doing like solving problems on my own computer. And I kind of realized, like, I don't know, I feel like full stack developer kind of speaks to that, like a little bit of everything, but also at the same time, there's a little bit of tongue in cheek that I'm not exactly a specialist in anything either,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I I identify with that as well, because I found, I like to kind of figure out, how I can use R for this and that. And you're right that, at this point there is so much that you can do beyond, just statistics, which is what many people kind of assume. Um,
Mhm.
Travis, I'd say I'm far less familiar with the nuts and bolts of your work and what you do kind of on a daily basis with R. Can you talk through, maybe an example of what a typical day and how where R fits into the work that you do today?
Sure. So I'm not a full stack R developer like Garrick. I'm mostly, I'll call it a coattail R developer, which means I follow around smart people like Garrick and use the things that they develop to actually make cool stuff happen. Um, but in practice, in the clinical trial space, these days, the process of making when a trial is done or when it's underway, you have to produce very regular kinds of reports. That traditionally has been a SAS dominated field. Um, and they're often not overly statistical. It'll be things like, let's count the adverse events that are happening in each, maybe the treatment arm and a placebo arm, and let's make sure that the patients that are receiving treatment are safe, and we can monitor them, and make sure that the trial is going well with regards to safety. And so there's something overly complicated there, but in the SaaS world, the kinds of reports that you get from that sort of process tend to be not like pretty. They're very ASCII looking and kind of just like an old dot matrix printer from the 80s. And I think, just out of
Sure.
practice, I think there are people in the FDA and everywhere else that are very good at reading that kind of output because they've been doing it for decades now. But with our Markdown, we now have an opportunity to make these things look and feel very modern, like as if you landed in an HTML web page, and it's interactive, and tables are color coded. And we've been producing things these days that our safety monitoring boards, they'll see our reports and they'll go, "Oh my goodness, I'm so glad that this, had this particular theme, or, was color coded like a 538 publication, because I was able to very quickly see that we need to keep an eye on this particular patient, or, this particular arm of the study, because I can quickly see something's going on there." So that's a really good feeling when that happens. That we're actually having real translational impact on patients that are actively receiving cancer care. Uh, so yeah, it's much like Garrick was kind of saying, just the broad, the breadth of what you can do with R these days is so much beyond statistics that I've kind of put statistics to the side, and I'm just quite happy to make nice looking reports.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let's transition now from talking about the work that you do today to the work that you did when you were both at the Moffitt Cancer Center. Um, I'll let you decide who the best person to pick this one up is, but I'm wondering if you can kind of explain a bit in terms of the work that you did there. And we're going to talk a lot about a set of custom packages that you made. So I'm curious if you could dive into what were the pain points that led you to think about making a package at Moffitt in the first place? So I'll leave to you to.
Sounds good. I could probably
I'll
step
let Travis
stay
take the
there.
first half of that.
Yeah, because that's a good way because I was kind of on the coordinating side of like what's strategy, and then Garrick was very much the technical implementer of the strategy. So at Moffitt at the time, like many cancer centers or even just tertiary hospitals, they were thinking about how do they store their electronic health record data for research purposes. So any hospital has like this large behemoth of a EHR system. Usually it's Epic or Cerner, the two kind of giants in the space. And they're very unwieldy, and you can't really, for regulatory and other reasons, directly access those for research purposes often. So usually you have to kind of like lift and shift that data into a separate data warehouse to make it useful or even usable at all for research. So they were pretty forward thinking at Moffitt. At the time, they said, let's move away from the classic kind of on-premise Oracle flavor data stack, like a warehouse that's been kind of the standard for many, many years. And they said, let's instead do the cloud thing, like, like fintech and other spaces are doing. And so we spent a lot of time strategizing around how we will put things into AWS and then put it into a Snowflake data warehouse so that we could actually get more efficient ELTs, so extract, load, transform for those in the data engineering space. I don't want to go into any of this kind of jargon, but kind of a more efficient flow of the data.
Sorry, Travis.
I can pause. It's fine. Oh no, no worries, no worries. Yeah.
I'm just waiting for you to get Zoom bombed by like a deer or something.
Yeah. The last place you were thing, there was a cougar. Like everywhere I went, there was this. They had these like they just like stapled up these like bright yellow signs that said "cougar spotted in the area," and the kids loved it. They were like really trying to like become they were going to become a cougar snack was their thing. They're like, I'm a cougar snack, and they like run outside and like. We do a lot of unsafe stuff. So anyway, Snowflake. Yeah. Let me back up a minute. No worries. Yeah, no worries. Right. So they were going to put everything in AWS and load the data into a Snowflake data warehouse, which is many people have probably heard of Snowflake these days. It's just a fancy cloud-based data storage system. So all that's set up. And the data starts to move into there. But then the next question is, well, what next, right? Like how do we access that data? How do we get business insights from it? Like, research data deliveries. How do we facilitate that process where an investigator at the cancer center might come to us and say, hey, I want to know, like, colorectal cancer patients have a certain kind of genetic mutation. I want to see how they're doing on this particular therapy. Like, what next? So all the data is in the Snowflake and it's in AWS, and then we need to facilitate that transaction. And that's where the kind of our piece starts to fit in, and Gerke can take over.
Yeah, I think the one piece that's kind of missing there, or that I'd like to kind of fill in, is that we also so Travis was working as you were technical director, I guess, of the
scientific director
of the core.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I was a part of.
Correct.
Scientific director. Yeah,
close enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the point where we started thinking about developing packages was around looking. So we had this core group of Travis, can you remind me of the full name of the core?
Collaborative Data Services Core.
Yeah. Collaborative Data Services Core. I love the name. So in general, researchers at Moffitt Cancer Center would come to this core asking for specific types of data. And the idea would be that the CDSC we would go out and then interface with whatever data systems had that data. And sometimes pulling from multiple data sources, Eventually, yeah, Travis sort of talking about like eventually the idea was to have everything end up in one place. But there's a like an intermediate layer where we had to, as a group, we had to understand the research needs, the data needs of the researcher, and then translate that into actually getting the data from somewhere and putting it together into a structure that ultimately would still be useful to the researcher and wasn't just like, hey, I grabbed everything that looked like it was useful and now good luck figuring it out. So like the quality of research really depends on that transaction and the ability of the uh, of that intermediary group to sort of like really understand the research problem and also the data. Um, and that's also something that's much easier to do if you're writing code. Those kinds of requests come in often. They're often repeats. So people, you learn one thing to solve a problem for one researcher, and then within a relatively short period of time, another researcher will want something very similar. And if you're writing in code, and if you're doing that in code, you can build off of what you've done before and what you've learned, or you can share knowledge much more easily. If it's all done through Excel and through clicking and UI interfaces, then every problem you're basically approaching it to relearn it again, or it's somebody new coming and relearning a new thing, and you don't really get to like build off of what you've done before. So that definitely led to us saying, like, how do we get a buy-in to learn R and to get these employees to learn R and also to start using R as a culture, and especially knowing that ultimately we were going to end up with data stored somewhere where an interface through code was going to be even more important.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, for people who don't know, people who've never made a package is really like a set of functions that you create and kind of package up. So I'm curious what, you talk, Garrick, about the example of people emailing you, say, and asking for things, and then somebody else the next week would email you and ask for something similar. Why not just keep a series of snippets of code, somewhere in a file and just send them those snippets? Like what's the value of actually putting it into a formal structure to make a package?
Yeah, there's a lot of value. I mean, first, so you're right. That's definitely the first thing that you get almost right away is that it makes it easier to share your code with someone else. So, um, but so the setup here for us was a lot about sort of the culture, like creating a culture of writing code and of learning R, and so for me, the choice to start using a package was really about making it easy for us to share the code, for us to have a place to talk about code that we were writing, for us to share best practices. So another advantage of having a package is that you're not just sharing like with among colleagues, but somebody who maybe is a higher level of developer can kind of lead the way and kind of bring everyone else with them. Um, and so those were some of the things that we were really looking for when we started writing packages, as a way to kind of bring everyone together around the same code, as opposed to bringing people together around disparate pieces of code that are in various emails or hiding in folders. And
So it sounds like a
It's
packet.
such a good
Go
point.
ahead, Travis.
It's such a good point. There's the parallel with the Word document almost, right? Where you get like people are working and emailing Word documents back and forth. You end up with like THE underscore final underscore final file two final. The same thing can happen with code if you don't centralize it and drop it into a package where people know that that's the source of truth.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting because you both talked about how putting in a package was not just about, making it simpler for, say, for people who are already using R, but also kind of getting more buy-in and getting people on board to, who maybe weren't using R or were just using R a little bit. Can you talk about how having a package facilitates people kind of upskilling their R skills?
I could think of one, Gary, right away,
Yeah,
and it's
absolutely. Go ahead,
oh,
Travis, if you want.
it's where it's why I kind of jumped to Garrick. I'm so glad you brought in the people part of this, because I jumped right to sort of talking about the tooling bit, because where my mind was going is setting up the Snowflake connections and connecting to AWS, or even if it's Oracle, like it doesn't matter like what the system is, what the data system is. It's so complicated and nuanced to connect to these sorts of resources, because like it just sucks. And it's really, really nice if it's in a package and someone can just like, if Garrick wrote a package and they could just say connect Snowflake Moffat or something like that, and then boom, they're connected and they don't have to worry about all that stuff, that like administrative sort of overhead. And it speaks to the need for and the utility of an internal package, because of course that sort of connector function wouldn't really be useful outside of Moffat because it's unique to their data resources and their connections. Um, so yeah, I mean that's one key area where we're just having a package that would take take away the overhead of like just setting up the R session, and then so that people can actually write code and kind of do the data queries day-to-day job instead of like handling administrative
Right.
silliness.
Yeah, because it seems like what you're saying is then they can get into actually, working with the data versus spending, hours fighting to try to access the data, in some cases probably failing to do that, and then being like, screw it, I'm not even going to try messing around with R. This is too hard. Sounds like what you're saying is this gives them that jump to dive right into the actual data portion of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. For me, I think it creates a number of gradual on ramps for people who are learning or are working on gaining more skills, in particular around coding. Um, the first is just the advantage of so there are a couple of things that you get by having a package that, as you said, you're taking functions that you've written somewhere and you're putting it all in one place, which is nice. But the next thing that you get from that is you get to document your functions. So you can write the documentation, and the syntax lets you write the documentation next to the function. So you document the function in the same place where you write the code that the function uses, right? And then that's super helpful because like the package automatically then comes with a resource for people who are learning. And, they know that they have some documentation that they can look to as they're using the functions. Also, by solving some basic problems to get people started early, you have to go through the initial sort of effort of setting up the package and getting going and everything, and installing all the software and all that. But for the most part, once if you can automate a lot of that too, and then you just sort of say, here, you can use this function, and you get people much closer to solving the problems that they want to solve much faster. And so that's huge, because then they see the value and the utility of writing code quicker, instead of struggling through basic examples or struggling to get the basic things working. By having it work more quickly, and by getting much closer to like, this is why you'd want to be using this in the first place, it's much more motivating. And then the next part is, once they're used to how the package works, so that once they understand how functions work, and as they gain more skills, then there's a place to turn when you want to actually learn, like, okay, well, what are you doing behind the scenes? And it's not a black magic box that you can't look into. It's the code for whatever it is that you're doing or that you've learned to do is there. It's part of the package, and you could go look at it, and then that gives you an on ramp to collaborating together with the people who have been writing the package, and at that point now you're able to sort of share the code. You're at least able to learn from someone else's code, and then from there you can start. Maybe you notice that there's something that the function does wrong or should do differently, or you have an idea about a new feature, and you have a place to put that idea and start working on it. And then, it's so like very sneakily, and you have these on ramps towards getting people to use code more and to solve their problems and see the value of using code. And you get that from writing a package.
Yeah.
And it's a good point about the, reducing friction early on. I know JD Long gave a very cool talk in the 2019 RStudio conference, something like empathy and community practice or something like that, I think was the title. But he had this figure that stuck with me, which was like, what we really want to do anytime we're writing code or building a community around programming is reduce the amount of time it takes for someone to start kicking ass. And so that's exactly what Garrick was doing with those packages, is like they could fire something up and like just with a handful of helpers, instead of like sloughing through, oh God, what do I got to, how do I connect and how do I set up
Right.
this data frame and make these things happen? Like within an hour, they could be like kicking ass. Like, oh, this is it. Of course, I should have been using R this whole time, because this is so streamlined and easy.
Uh, and I love that idea, because I think a lot of organizations, I mean, it's natural that they'll have some people who are, say, more advanced R users, whereas other people, are just starting or, have only been using it for a bit. And so something like a package allows you to like kind of leverage the skills of those who are further along to help those who are just starting out or newer to really kind of, move more quickly than they would be able to on their own. I think that's such a good use of having a package. Um, One other thing I want to ask about Garrick, this was last year. I asked about what were some of the main things that packages, internal packages that you've seen do, and you responded that the package coerces your coworkers into following your opinionated best practices by making my version of the happy path as easy and automated as possible. Can you explain yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, this is definitely my favorite part about writing packages is that you get to define the workflow a little bit, and I'll talk about like the first part is if you're on your own and you're working in a group and you're like wanting it to go a certain way. Like in this case, I was sort of you could sort of similar to the lone data scientist trying to bring other people along with them. You In those cases you can be like, well, I really want this whole workflow to sort of work like this, and you can write functions that make it happen. And then you sort of teach people how to use those functions, and the happy path is the easy path. So you've especially when there's a lot of value in that. So when you show people like, oh, this thing that you've been doing is taking a long time, and you can do it like this, and it'll be faster. But there's also that little bit of behind that where you have some, as the package author, you have some control over that workflow and what that workflow looks like. And so you can kind of coerce people into doing things the way that you feel is best. But that's the sort of sneaky version. But the more collaborative way of framing this is also that if you're in a situation where so packages can still be useful even when you don't really know what to do, or you don't have a defined workflow yet. So an internal package can be a really great place to have the discussions about, well, how are we going to do this? So as you approach a really difficult technical problem, like how are we going to get everybody connected to Snowflake, and how are we going to make it possible for everyone to use our data warehouse? Or what are the tables in the data warehouse going to look like? Having a package as a place where you start defining what that workflow and what the workflow looks like gives you a place to sort of effectuate your design decisions and see what they look like, and can really kind of bring the conversation together in a way that just sort of like talking through what the process looks like can be a lot more difficult. And so like I've seen internal packages be used in that way, where a group of people come together and say, we have to do this thing. We don't know how we're going to do it. We don't know how we're going to teach other people how to do it. But we can kind of get together and talk about, well, okay, so this is how it should work. And then you start defining functions that lead people onto the happy path that you're designing. And then you educate them using the help materials that you've written for the package. And it really brings together a lot of different people and processes.
This notion of coercion, I've been thinking about that from package design as a user of a package lately. And I'm very grateful for it. So as a lot of the field right now is moving back towards basics in the sense of like we should all just be writing SQL. And so I haven't used like a ton of SQL in the past, but enough to like make me dangerous. And then when I returned a couple months ago, I realized that by in the design of the dplyr package, the tidyverse developers chose design elements that more or less coerced me into learning SQL, so that now I'm very good at another language without even having known it. And of course, they chose that as the happy path because SQL is a very good language, and it's the structure of it and the syntax of it is very very smart. And so they chose the happy path. I learned the happy path without even knowing I was doing that. And later I go, oh my goodness, like it almost made me multilingual in a programming sense, just unintentionally, which is really really awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I was talking to Kyle Walker, developer of Tidy Census, a couple weeks ago, and he was saying, one of his motivations for making Tidy Census was he wanted to get data programmatically from the Census Bureau, but also he wanted it to be in a tidy format because he feels very strongly that that's the best way to work with data. And so, his package, which he initially said he developed just for himself, but has since, become quite popular, is opinionated insofar as it's not just for accessing census data, it's for accessing census data and bringing it in a tidy format, which I think is a good example of kind of exactly what you're talking about. Not obviously in an internal package, but in a package used, more broadly.
Yeah. And there are also ways with like tidy census is a great example where that is a complicated data set. It is difficult to download the raw data set from the US Census and put it together in the appropriate way. And if you do something wrong in that process, you could end up with results that are incorrect or misleading. And by making sure that it's done in a way that is, that follows the opinionated path, that makes it easier for the analyses that come out of it to be accurate. It also is easier to audit because it's in a package, and it's easier to supply fixes because it's in a package, and the community can step in and say, wait, we should do this over here slightly differently or whatever.
Well, so I had one last question about like breaking your code into multiple packages. Cause I initially, found out, I watched the talk that you gave about this. Now that I think about it, I actually think that's more complicated than we need to go into. Just because I'm, again, like pitching this to kind of beginners. So I think at this point, maybe what's going to make most sense is to switch to actually doing some code. So thank you for being game to do this. It'll be I promise, just very simple. So at this point, yeah, let's have Garrick, if you don't mind, just we'll have you put your screen up and we'll actually make a very simple package. I've asked you if you can make a package that has a ggplot theme. In that same Twitter thread that you talked about the happy path, I asked people what they did with internal packages. And one of the most common things is making custom themes. So I thought that would be a good thing to have you kind of make a package and show sort of how that works. And then I'll ask you questions as you go, and Travis, feel free to chime in with this kind of reflected or did not the work that you did at Moffitt as well.
It's going to reflect the work in the same sense that I'm going to learn a ton from watching Garrett code right now. I love that. I'm so excited for this. I love this kind of exercise because every time I talk to him, I learn something new.
Okay, great.
So I have a project open here. I have a report, and I'm pretending that I work for a company called Helix. I don't know. I used an AI name generator to come up with that one. This report is pretty basic. It just it creates a plot using data that's built into ggplot, and you'll probably recognize it from the R for Data Science book. But here's the report, and you can imagine there's lots of other things in this report, but the key thing here that's going to catch someone's eye is this plot. This is a basic, regular, standard themed ggplot theme of a plot. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to use the Helix color palette. I've also used the color generator to pick out a couple different colors. I kind of like this theme. and we'll see if we can incorporate it somehow into our plot, and maybe also changing some fonts along the way. So here's the plot, sort of. It doesn't look any different yet, but we're going to make it look a little different. So let's create a theme together. The function for creating a theme from ggplot is theme. So this is so I'm going to actually call this like Helix theme, right? And then I'll assign theme to this. I'm going to make sure I have the tidyverse loaded. Let's go up to the top chunk and run library tidyverse so that we have the tidyverse available to us. And now theme has autocomplete. So I can pick out a few things in here that I'd like to change. Any thoughts off the top of your head?
I mean, something like title size is,
I like,
but Travis, go ahead.
yeah, same. I was going to mention about the title too, aligning it to the left, the argument theme, plot.title.position equals plot. Is
that's a great choice. And let's see, I will also, and then also plot.title, element text. So we can use an element text to update the plot title. And here, let's see, we could say face equals bold and size equals, I don't remember what the default size is, so we'll just pick something. 13. Let's see if that might be huge. We're going to find out. So I have this Helix theme here, and then I'm going to just add that Helix theme into my ggplot down here. And let's knit this again and see.
And then I'll ask Can I ask a clarifying question for the viewers? Maybe I'm actually curious too. When you think about, when you go, I'm going to write an R package, do you start locally, like not in the package? Like you don't go like use this, make a new package or whatever steps you're probably about to show us. Do you instead like kind of do it in a standalone document and then migrate that code into a more abstracted, generalized use case?
Yeah, that's a good question. Either one is great. Sometimes you start out knowing this should be a package and I'm going to write a package today. And you can do that. And then in other cases, probably much more often, you'll have written some code and you'll think to yourself, I would like to use this again somewhere else, not right here in the same project, or I'd like to share it with someone else. And that is a great time to take a step back and think about making it a package. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know from the people that I work with, a lot of times they'll have, like a functions.r file that they'll just like pass around. And I think that is a really good point at which, doing something like you're about to do is going to be beneficial. So.
Yeah, functions.r screams make a package.
Exactly.
It does. You're almost there. You're all the way almost there.
Yeah.
There's one last thing I want to do, I guess, which would be plot.caption equals element text. I want to change the color of the caption. I've picked these colors out. It'd be nice to use them. So I'm going to let's see. I like this magenta. We'll say that's like the primary color for the Helix brand. So, magenta. And I'll run this. And we should end up with a new plot. There's some differences, but not a ton. And you can see the helix is in that magenta color. Okay, so at this point, you can definitely go very far down the rabbit hole of tweaking ggplots. I have been known to spend days tweaking a single ggplot. So at some point, this is a basic example for us, but in real life, this is usually a much more complicated example. Maybe we can imagine that you've shared this report with someone and they said, wow, that's a really awesome plot that you did at the end of that report. How can we use that? And I could take this code and I could copy and paste it into a functions.r file. But as we've been talking about, a package is a great way to bundle this and share it with someone else. So in order to create a package, you need a couple things. You're going to need the DevTools package, which you can get with install packages DevTools. And I may have this already loaded, but I guess I didn't. And another really helpful package is use this. Install that packages use this. We'll get you the use this package. Yeah. So DevTools is you use specifically for things like checking or testing your package to a certain extent. But use this is the main place to go when you're trying to figure out where you're supposed to put files, how you create the package, that sort of thing. It's much easier to use this to coordinate all of that. So I'm going to use this right now. I'm going to I'll library use this, and then I'll say create package, and then you have to tell it where you want to put the package. So I'm going to put the package. In this case, let me look at my files. I have a demo folder, and the project I'm in right now is in demo my project. I'm going to put my package right next to that, and I'll call it my package. So I'm saying in my home folder, under the demo folder, I'll create a my package. And I think I don't think I need to give it a name. It'll infer that the name should be my package, and just because that is not a valid R name, it actually it can't have dashes. So I'm going to say my camel case package, and I'll go ahead and create that. And as soon as I hit run, use this did a lot of things, which happened very quickly. It was hard to see, but it basically created a folder and created called my package where I asked it to be. And then it added a couple other little things, an RStudio project, a description file. The description file is important, and we'll come back to it in a second, and an R folder. And these are the basic things that you need to have an R package. So the idea is we'll put scripts, R scripts that have functions in them inside of the R folder. And so that'll be the first thing that we're going to do. So I'm going to first go and find that R Markdown file that I had open. And I'll maximize this again. And we're going to find the part where I defined the theme. And so this is the code that I want to bring in. This isn't a function. I'm going to just copy it over, and then we'll turn it into a function together. As I said, you put your functions in R files under the R folder of your package, your project. But you could actually use this again. So I'll library use this one more time now that I'm in the package project. And I can say use R. And this means use an R file. And I'm going to call this helix_theme, because that's the idea for the name of the theme, or the name of the function that we're going to write.
So when you do that, you don't have to put like .r. It looks like it adds .r onto it. Is that right?
Yeah. So use this knows what you mean, and it'll go into the R folder, create a file called helix_theme.r, and then it opens it up for you in RStudio, so you're ready to start working on it.
Gotcha.
So
that function can be useful as well if you have a lot of R files. And like eventually, if you have a very mature package, there'll be lots and lots of .r files, and you can say R, and it'll find and open the file that already exists. Even.
Oh, okay. Huh, I didn't know.
That's useful.
So if I already had a Helix theme, it will open it for me.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. And all of the use this functions come with a little bit of helpful instructions. So you don't just call the function and stuff happens. They will almost always include some instructions after you've called the function. So here it tells you to modify the file, which means go write your code in it. And it also says you could call use test to create a matching test file if you wanted. But we don't have to get into testing it. something that you'll want to do eventually, but for a simple package, tests are not necessary. And you could quote me without attribution.
All right. Travis said it.
Yeah. Okay, so we have this, I have this code here. Okay, so I have this code here. This is supposed to create a ggplot theme, and I need to turn it into a function. And so basically the way to make it a function is to sort of say function, you give it the function keyword, and then there's parentheses and then curly braces. And then the part that's inside of the curly braces is the part that runs when you call the function. It needs to have a name. And so we give it a name by assigning it to an object. And I said I wanted to call this Helix theme. And now I almost have a function that will work. One of the biggest differences with writing code in a package versus writing code in like a normal R script is that in normal R scripts, when you need to use another package, you would call library whatever package you need to use, right? So you would, in this case, I could call library ggplot2, and then I could use ggplot2 in my script. But inside of a package, there's a slightly different way of kind of keeping track of the dependencies of your package. And again, use this can help us with that. So you can call use _ package, and I'll say that I need to use the ggplot2 package. And if I run this, it will modify some files. This time it didn't open anything for me, but it did tell me what it did. So it added ggplot2 to the imports field in description. And it's telling me then that I can refer to functions with this syntax, ggplot2 with double colons. So this might be a new syntax. You can use functions from a package without having called library to make sure that package is loaded or attached. And the way to do that is to put the package name 2 colons and then the name of the function that you want to call. So in this case, we need to update theme. Here we called theme, but right now, if we tried to run this, R wouldn't know if this is theme from our package or theme from somewhere else. So we have to say explicitly, this is the theme function from ggplot2. So ggplot2 with 2 colons theme. And now R will not be confused about that. We can go back to the description file and take a look to see if we can find ggplot2. And you can see there's a field that was added at the very end of the description. It could be kind of anywhere in here, really. But it says that our package imports ggplot2, which is a fancy way of saying that in order to use our package, you also have to have ggplot2 installed.
So what happens if someone is wanting to use your package and they don't have ggplot2? What does that line do?
This line will tell R to install ggplot2 for them when they install your package. It basically will make sure it'll make sure that they have the package installed. You won't be allowed to install your package without more or less without figuring out how to get ggplot2 installed first. And this is a really nice feature of packages. It makes it very easy to sort of say, especially from this file, to say to someone else, like, okay, so you'd like to use my code. You're going to need these other packages too in order to do it. And they don't have to then go, read through your code to figure it out. It's declared upfront, and then the installer, the installed packages, will actually know what to do, and will bring you ggplot2 and install it for you. I'm realizing now there's.
Well,
so go ahead. Sorry.
This is so if people have seen when they do install packages, and it takes a little bit sometimes. It seems like that's mostly because it's installing not just whatever the particular package that you've listed to install, but any dependencies, any other packages that package needs in order to work.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So there's a nice feature once you've started writing your functions in a package. And now I'm in a package project, so I can use DevTools now. Instead of DevTools, there's a function called load all. And this will load all of the functions and make them available to use interactively. This is for the developer who's working on the package. It means that I don't have to go through the whole process of installing my own package just to test something out. I can run DevTools load all and get the functions loaded up. And then I can now run Helix theme. And this should return a ggplot2 theme. Except it gave me an error. So
Great. Yeah, I was going to ask because, and I kind of unfortunately know the answer to this because when I write packages, I mostly screw things up rather than do them correctly. How would you know that you have forgotten to ggplot2 : something? Is this the way you typically find out, or are there other ways that you prefer?
there are two ways. This is the first way, is to try to run it and it won't work, and it'll say you can't find the function. And again, this gets back to, as Travis said, is exactly right, that the fact that we haven't explicitly said that element text comes from the ggplot2 package, so R gets confused. The other way is that there is another tab available to you if you're working on developing a package called the build tab, and there's a check button here. It's equivalent to saying DevTools check, but you can also click this button and have it just sort of run in the background. And this will do some basic checks that are similar to what CRAN does for incoming packages, just to make sure that your package, everything is sort of in order and defined in the right place and everything. It'll flag problematic things. Here it's telling me something about the license, which is fine. At some point, it's going to tell me that element text, that there's a problem with this. And there it was. So here it says,
Can I point out? Oh, go ahead.
Checking R code for possible problems. And it's telling me no visible global function definition for element text. And it also is telling me, oh, I forgot to bring along that palette object that I had in my report. So this definitely helps you. This process helps you as you think about how do you modularize something that you've written and turn it into something that can run without the rest of the report that you've written or without the rest of the script that you've written.
That's awesome.
Go ahead, Travis.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I think there's like a slight lag where I was like talking on you. Sorry. In any event,
It's okay.
I just wanted to point out that I just learned something extremely cool from you. I did not know that there was a check button in the build thing, and I want to point out what is especially cool about that. Now that I've seen you do it, is check often takes a very long time to run, especially if you have like a lot of R files and a lot going on in your package. And if you did the thing that I always do, which is on the right in the console, right, DevTools check, it kind of like freezes your session, I guess I'll say, like until the check is done. But what Garrick just did by clicking the button and running in the build pane is you could keep like developing and doing work over there in the console while it ran the check. That's radical.
Very helpful. Okay, so let's fix this problem. We'll put ggplot2 here with 2 colons. There's another element text, ggplot2 with 2 colons. And the check discovered this, discovered palette. And here again, it's saying no visible binding for global variable palette, which is, it's kind of hard to interpret errors, but what this means is basically R is saying, you use this palette variable, but I don't know where you're getting it from. And it's definitely not in your package code. So you should figure out where it's coming from. And that is coming from here, this variable that I created earlier in my script. Right? This is a pretty common thing where, maybe you have some dependencies in your script, and that as you take pieces of it out to put into a package, you'll discover that there are interlocked or interwoven dependencies. But this is helpful. This palette, I actually it'd be nice to have this be something that people could access as well. And so maybe I'll make another function called Helix palette. And I'll start by just making it a function that returns that vector. And so here I would say Helix palette, and then you can see right away this is a little bit of an odd syntax here, but this returns the vector, and then we index into getting magenta. But I'll try this really quick. We'll just see what it looks like. So I can now, I ran that with a shortcut. There's a shortcut that shows up, which is Command-Shift-L. And you can use Command-Shift-L to load your package. So getting your package loaded to test it out is pretty quick. I use that a lot because then you hit Command-Shift-L, it brings you over to the console, and then you can just try out your function. So I can try out helix_palette, and I can see that it's going to give me a palette.
A clarifying question. It was something that confused me when I first started writing packages. So you don't have to write : what's your package called? My package : the helix palette to reference your own function, huh?
Right. Yeah. So by default, R will look for functions inside of your package first. And so in this case, I can call helix palette because it's something that I define in this. It's a function that I define in this R package. Yeah, which is really nice. I'm going to make one last little modification here, which would just be to make this a little bit like a little bit easier. And I could say color. I'll give helix palette an argument. So maybe we might ask for a color, and maybe I'll say that if by default color will be null, and when it's null, we'll just return the vector of palettes. So I have to do a little bit. I'm going to store the palette in a variable, and then I'll check if color is null. And if it is, we can return the palette directly, and otherwise we can return the color. And we'll just hope that people give the right color name for now. You can make this function a little bit more complicated. You can. The nice part about writing functions is you can really help people kind of do the right thing by guiding them in your arguments, in tests around those arguments, and in the messages that come up. So actually, let's do that. So if somebody were to give me a color name that is not in the names of our official palette, we can say, we'll stop, we'll throw an error, in other words, and say that the color that they chose is not an official helix color. Right. Okay. Let's see. Now I need to update this syntax up here so it's using that as well. So helix palette, we'll call helix palette with magenta, should give us the magenta color. All right, I'm going to do Command-Shift-L again to load the package. And this time, because I forgot to save, it'll ask me if I want to save, which I do. And now I can try helix palette magenta. And you can see I'll get just a single color. Or if for some reason I thought we had a blue color, but if I tried to get a blue color, I'll get a warning that blue is not an official helix color, which is nice. But at this point, I could run check one more time in the background and just kind of move that so it's out of the way. But I now have a helix theme, which returns a ggplot2 theme. And we're almost ready to use it. Okay,
Go ahead. How do you know your helix theme is going to work? When you're developing something like this, do you make a sample plot and then try it with helix theme, or how do you confirm that it actually works?
Yeah, let's do that. So I'm just going to copy this. I'll open up an R script, and in this case, I do need to library ggplot2 over here to get ggplot2 loaded. And this is where, so now, if I had any of those, places where I would be missing ggplot2, like the prefix for functions in my package, I wouldn't be able to see them anymore because I just loaded ggplot2 globally, unless you're using check. So this is why using check can be really helpful to kind of run in the background. because it sort of happens outside of your current work environment. Okay, so I have ggplot2 loaded, and then I have I've also manually I've loaded my package, and so now I just need to turn Helix theme into a function call, and I can run this ggplot example, and after just a minute or two, we can see we have the modifications from this theme. So we have our bold and bigger title, and we have the purple helix at the bottom, which is what we're wanting to see. Yeah. Once you get sort of much deeper into writing packages, you can use tests. You can use testing to ensure that your functions do what they need to do. But initially, this is a great place to start. Is just trying it on your own, and then sharing it with your colleague, and then saying, "Does that work for you?" And you can just grow from there.
Cool. Well, let's go back to our script and have you finish doing what you were doing there before I interrupt.
Yeah, absolutely. So the last little bit is just that. So these functions are available to me if I am using load package. But at this point, if I were to install the package, which will just take 1 second to install it, and it's going to, what's nice about this is RStudio will build the package for you. It will install it. And once you're all done and everything has worked, it'll say library my package. So it'll attach your package for you. And just ignore this message. I don't really know where that's coming from. So the problem though is, this is exactly what would happen for someone, if you shared it and said, "Hey, install my package and then use the Helix theme, and you'll have a really nice looking ggplot." If I try to run Helix theme now, I'll be told I can't find the function Helix theme. And that's because there's a small distinction in packages between functions that are it's called exported. So functions that are exported or are available to users on the outside of the package, and functions that are only available for use inside of the package. Yeah, that's probably the best way of sort of describing the difference between them. And so you can imagine you might have some logic where, like in this case, for right now, I could decide, this Helix palette function, this isn't ready for general use yet. I'm not quite ready for that, but I am ready to share Helix theme with everyone and make sure that they're able to use it. And so the thing that we need to do is we need to document it, and export it. So, okay, the first thing is to give it a title. So, in official Helix ggplot2 theme, I'll give that the title. And the title is, so I'm using these comments, a special kind of comment where they have the hash bang and then a single quote and then a space. And so then the first one is sort of like the email header or the subject line or the title of this function. And then you can write a short description where you could say, the official Helix ggplot2 theme. And you can just say something about it, right? For use in awesome plots, uses a larger title font size, adjust the position of the title, and ensures that the caption text is magenta. One of the really nice parts about this is you can actually use markdown syntax. So I can say magenta in italics. And then the final piece is to say @export. So this syntax, this at something, this whole syntax here is called Roxygen2. It's a way for you to document your functions. And the @export is a special directive that tells Roxygen that this is an exported function. So, which is what we want. So I'm going to save this. And now we need to document my package. So DevTools, ;document, and I'll run this and it will do a couple little things. You could also use the command palette for this. So I can open the command palette up with Control-Shift-P and say document. And you might have to look through this. Here, build package documentation. And it's happening in a background session there. Okay, let's install and restart one time. And once we get our library, my package coming up, we'll now have two things. First of all, we will have Helix theme available to us, so we can just call it and it works because it's exported and available to users once they've run library, whatever your package name is. The other thing is you can say !Helix_theme. And, just like you can do this for regular R functions and pull up the help pages, your function now has a help page. And this is really cool.
Yeah, I can see how this, like what you were talking about before, in terms of, being able to guide people, providing them this type of documentation versus, you send them some code and then also in the email, there's some instructions on how to use it. Like here, it's all packaged together in one place.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and we've just sort of barely touched on the surface of what you can do with Roxygen with this type of documentation. But it's worth noting that you can include examples. You can give much clearer descriptions of what your function is doing. You can write very long sections. So, you can put a lot of documentation into this. And it's really nice that it comes along with the package. So anybody who has installed your package, at any point when they get lost, they can say your function and get right to the documentation.
So Garrick, I'm just looking at the time and I don't want to take up more of both of your time than we bargained for. So I think probably the best thing at this point would be to just, like, if we can talk about how we could get this on somebody else's machine, like how somebody else could install this, whether that's pushing it to GitHub and having them install it through there, or I don't know what other way you might do it. But if you want to focus on that, that would probably work.
Yeah, absolutely. The easiest way to get this to somebody else would be to put it on a version control system. So if you have access to GitHub, GitLab, or any other version control system, that's the easiest way. And I'm most familiar with GitHub. Our studio uses GitHub quite a lot. At Moffitt, we used GitHub as well. Let's say okay, so you can do this. Sure. You know what? I'll actually do this for us, right? So, although I don't think it's going to work, I'm going to have to just sort of talk through it. But you can use this will help you. So you have functions and use this, of course. Use GitHub. You can see there's use Git and use GitHub. So I could say use GitHub, and I could say, where I want to push this. Usually would say so my GitHub username is Aden-Buie, and I would, that's actually all you need to do. And then after that, it would push this package up to GitHub and using the name. So it would push it into a repository called my package. That won't work because I haven't set up my keys here in this context. But once that happens, you can then use DevTools to install those kinds of packages. So DevTools, the converse of this is that DevTools has a function called install_. And here you can pick from, these are all of the places. This is a great list of all of the places that you could put a package if you really, really want to. But the most common is to say GitHub. And here I would say Aden-Buie / my package, which is a way to reference the repository that would have been created on GitHub if I had called use GitHub. And you run this and your package gets installed. And that's about it. That's more or less what it takes. And then as you develop your package more, you would push new changes up to GitHub, and you could tell your colleagues, go pull the latest version. And your package actually can be versioned too. So there in the description file, there is a version field. And so as you're updating things, there's also a function in use this. So use version. and I might say, I want to, like, we just added a major feature here. So I'm going to bump this package to version 1.0. Cause this package is great and it deserves 1.0. So, and I used, you can choose between like the different pieces of this version number. But the important part is that you can change it. And so then later someone else can say, oh, I was using your package on this version. And you can say, well, I actually fixed that bug, that you're talking about, and you should be using this version. And that, even if you're not, committing your analyses into version control, this part of using a package can really help you, whenever you run into problems like that.
It's kind of obvious, but I never really thought about it until we talked today, realizing that the term package like refers to the idea of packaging up not just code. I mean, I assume this is what it refers to, not just code, but documentation, information about, other packages that have to be imported. Like it's a whole collection of thing that enables people to run it in a way that if you were to just pass around like an R script file, people would be like, oh, I can't run it because I don't have this package installed. Or how does that work? I wish there were some documentation. Like a package just kind of handles all that really elegantly, which I think is pretty handy when you think about it.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, is there anything else that we didn't get to on this piece of it, or anything else? And Garrick, don't worry about like we didn't get to every single detail. Like that's totally fine. I mean, when I post video, post resources. Actually, Malcolm Baird is making a course for the rest of us on package development. So yeah, hopefully that'll be out by the time this video goes up as well.
This would be great motivation for that, I think.
Cool. Well, are there, last question before we sign off, are there any resources that both of you might recommend for folks interested in learning about making their own packages?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely have to jump in front of Travis here on this one and just say our packages by Hadley Wickham and Jenny Bryan is excellent. It's a great introduction. It's a great resource so it's great both at introducing you to the idea and the concepts behind writing packages. It's also a great resource afterwards when you need to go back and look and figure out what you're supposed to do. And it's available for free online, and that it's nearing they're almost done updating to the next edition, so it's very up to date.
Yeah, insane. I use chapter 2 most often the whole game. So it's this awesome chapter where they just go through like step 1, step 2, step 3. They don't really describe like why, like that's what the rest of the book does, but they just say, if we want to make a package, here in like 10 pages is exactly how you do it. And I follow that all the time, no matter how many times I've written a package, I still refer to that and make sure I'm not skipping a step somewhere along.
Well, I imagine, Travis, for you, the other resource is to get in touch with Garrick. So you're wrapping up. If folks do want to kind of connect with you, see more about the work that you've done, what's the best place for them to do that?
So you can find me at GarrickAden-Buie.com, which is probably hard to spell. Or on Twitter, my username is GRRRCK.
Travis, what about you? What's the best place for folks to connect with you if they want that?
Oh, yeah. At Twitter, I'm Travis Gerke, GER. And at LinkedIn, Travis Gerke, GERKE.
You monopolize
TravisGerke.com.
Your username.
All those things. I tried to. I read that somewhere along the way. Someone said, I wish I synced up my username across all of my social. And so I tried to follow that lead.
Are you Travis Gerke on Twitter? Or, on TikTok? Oh, nice. Okay.
Yes, I am.
You can push people there as well. Great. Well, thank you both for chatting with me today, and I hope this is helpful for folks interested in learning about packages. Thanks again to both of you. That's it for today's episode. I hope you learned something new about how you can use R. Do you know anyone else who might be interested in this episode? Please share it with them. If you're interested in learning R, check out R for the Rest of Us. We've got courses to help you no matter whether you're just starting out with R or you've got years of experience. Do you work for an organization that needs help communicating effectively with data? Check out our consulting services at rfortherestofus.com/consulting. We work with clients to make high-quality data visualization, beautiful reports made entirely with R, interactive maps, and much, much more. And before we go, one last request. Do you know anyone who's using R in a unique and creative way? We're always looking for new guests for the R for the Rest of Us podcast. If you know someone who would be a good guest, please email me at david@rfortherestofus.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.